booties for black girl nerds.
Really appreciate it. Steal Away took my breath away. It had me on a roller coaster and I thought I knew where it was going, but took me in a completely different direction. So I love when movies do that, because as a film critic I see so many movies and I feel like I know where the plot's going, but when it takes me away, that means a lot. So good job with that. Mallori, I'm going to start with you. You've been building such an exciting career, from Kindred to now Steal Away. How does this role stretch or challenge you in new ways?
Oh my God. In so many ways. Yeah, I think this was a challenging film in the best possible way, right? Because there were so many facets of myself that I had to dig deep into. I don't want to, without giving too much away, right? Like, there were moments in the film where I was having to do a scene that was like something I have no experience with, right? Like, there's specifically one moment that I was like, wow, I'm really nervous to do this and I have no idea what this is like, and there were all these people like kind of counseling me and like telling me their experience with it, and I was like, okay. And it just taught me that there's nothing you can do in those moments except for be present, right? Be present with the experience and trust yourself. But part of that really came from working with Clement and Angourie, because Angourie, I learned from both of them. Angourie is like incredibly headstrong and smart, and she knows how to come into a scene and ask really great questions. Be curious about where she's at, and also be like, play. And then like Clement really trusted me, and that was my first time. Not my first time, but it was my first time really working with a director that like fully let me just explore whatever I wanted to do, and was just like, yeah, I'm gonna allow you to tell me what you want to do with this. And I was just like, okay, cool. But in turn, it made me feel really confident in myself. It really like changed me as an actor. So it stretched me in so many different ways. It made me feel very full and fulfilled artistically. So yeah.
I love that he does that. He doesn't put you in a box.
No.
And this film doesn't really have a box, like genre-wise. Like, it has very different categories. It's kind of gothic, horror, fairy tale, really beautiful. Angourie, for you, how did you navigate playing a role that intersects history, privilege, and allyship without oversimplifying those complexities?
That's a really, really great question. I think so much of it is in the page, with the writing from Clement and Tamara, that those complex narratives and like underlying themes of power and hierarchy was so like baked into the script. I also felt that like we see the journey that Fanny takes across the whole film, but also on a scene by scene level, there was so much in there. It wasn't like this scene just serves this one purpose in the overarching story. Like, there were sort of micro stories within each scene that dealt with, I think, power struggle and like Fanny's resistance to fully like understand what's going on in her house. I think also like I'm very interested in characters who change, and we really see, like, for me, so much of Fanny's character hinges on the moment where she finds out the truth and she has to reckon with that. And that is not, again, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a hard one. But that reckoning is not simple, you know, and she has to face that. And that's, I think, a great moment for the character, and a really like juicy thing to play.
Yeah, she becomes exposed, essentially. Yeah.
She does.
It's like a break with the character and really the story, essentially. Mallori, back to you. What parts of Cecile felt the most personal to you, and what parts required the most stretching for you as an actor?
That's a really good question. Okay, I would say the parts that felt like the most personal was Cecile's susceptibility to love easily and quickly and deeply.
Yeah.
I think that to my detriment is very much me, and like doing those scenes with Idrissa, who plays Rufus, and like having to fall in naively in love and like believe in safety and love so quickly is something that I resonate with so much, especially like just knowing like what it's like to be young and like and think that the first person you meet is like your forever person, and like that love exists, it's true, it's like it's real, and like to want to believe that so deeply and like find like safety and put your life in that. I totally get that feeling. So it was like not easy for me to find that at all.
Wow.
But I would say the parts that stretch me the most were probably the feeling of like being really you know what, the feeling of feeling really, really confident and like easy in my skin. I don't think that's something that comes extremely naturally to me. As of now, it's something I like really work on and try to work on as a person. But it was nice to step into someone who was like that and who got to just like completely be free in her sexuality and be free in her curiosity. So I think that's probably what stretched me the most, or was more of a stretch from who I am.
I love the dichotomy between these two and the dynamic and how these two are tethered together in this story. And back to you, Angourie, there's a theme of solidarity across the differences in Steal Away. How did you build trust and chemistry together as characters on set to help reflect on screen? So really, both as scene partners.
Oh my gosh. I mean, from the moment I met Mallori, I felt like this. We've been talking about this a lot today, and it sounds so overdone and cliche, but it is true that when we met, we just felt this this connection and this like I felt like I already knew you, and that's kind of hard to describe, and also like you don't want to lean too much on that initial connection of just like, oh well, we get along great, therefore it's all done. I think there is an element of like work that comes with it that I always think is valuable, whether or not you immediately connect with the person or not. Just that sort of like talking through everything. I remember like do you remember how it was scheduled? Like the last half hour of the film was all scheduled in the last week of filming. Which, do you remember that? Yeah. So the weekend before we started, we went and had brunch and like read through the last half hour of the script, which was so valuable. Oh, excuse me. Which was so valuable to me as an actor, and I think like I'm just so like grateful and like admiring of your laser focus and also your ability to stay present. And that brought me into the present also, which is like incredible.
I feel the same. No, really though, I do. Yeah, the same though. Like me too. No, like literally me too. No, but also like anyway, just to piggyback off Angourie, like as she was saying, she was always so down to work. So it was like that was so beautifully said. Like you can't just rely on the initial bond. I feel like we have been saying like all day, like I love Angourie, but it's also like she was willing to like work with me and ask questions through it, and I feel like that's also what added to just us having trust in each other. It was easy to trust you because I knew that we had a foundation of work beneath us.
Yeah.
So
Same. Yeah.
And for either one of you can answer this question, were there any rituals or music or references that helped you get into the emotional space that was required for your roles?
Yes. I actually like do this thing where I asked you about this too. I asked you about this too, but I do this thing where like I'll make different playlists for every character that I'm doing, and so like I would just like every time I'm on set, I listen to a collection of songs that I've like made for the character, which is a collection of characters that songs that I feel like the character would listen to, and also songs that I feel like describe the story and or like put me in like the game, like the game of the story. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's my thing.
So I gotta ask, what's on Cecile's playlist?
Oh my god, I have to pull up my phone because some of it was like French music, like that was
yeah.
so like there was a lot of stuff on. Let me think on it. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I told you this, but the film that I did right after Steal Away, I had asked you about what you were listening to and like what kind of playlist you had created, and I did that for my next character because I thought like, wow, this is such a. I had never before thought about like mixing songs that the character would listen to and also songs that represent the story. Yeah.
You know what I took from you too? You were journaling. That's what I was gonna say. She would journal on set as her character.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And
but
I
started
started doing that too, actually. So I guess we like took stuff. No, but yeah, no, that's also really good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I loved your performances respectively in this, and it really was like, first of all, one of my favorite films at Sundance. But I did not see that plot coming. So really, really great film.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this.
Thanks so much. Thank you for your insightful questions.
Hi, Clement. It's so good to see you again since brother.
Yes. I think during TIFF you were the first interview that I had.
Oh,
For
really?
yeah, for brother during TIFF because
Oh,
I remember it was on a Friday morning early.
well, I'm so glad to be able to speak with you. And this film, certainly a departure from Brother, um, but not so much because I like the family dynamics that we get to explore in this film, Steal Away. It blends fairy tale, gothic horror, and psychological drama. What first drew you to this story, and how did you envision combining those genres?
Well, the stories is based on a historical fiction, so nonfiction, and so when we read it and when I read it, I thought it was quite intriguing, but I didn't really want to dive back into sort of that part of that history in terms of like slavery, because what the book is about a young white woman who gets gifted a young black woman as her slave, and even though I found the story intriguing, I didn't really want to kind of dive back into that history. But with fantasy and sci-fi, or sort of fairy tales, what those are kind of allows you to do is to give you license to kind of create your own world and to smuggle in some ideas about the past and what happened and what's happening in the present, and potentially what's going to happen in the future.
I love these beautiful metaphors that the film explores throughout this narrative. And also, much like Brother, this film explores intimacy under pressure.
Right.
But here it tilts kind of towards the uncanny. um, it takes a little bit of a turn for us audiences. So how do you see Steal Away in conversation with your previous work?
With my previous work, I've always in some ways I've done dramas, like you've said, primarily family dramas. And I'm still interested in family dramas, but I'm also keenly interested in genre. And I'm interested in 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 stories about uh, our own history, Black history. And but I wanted to tell those stories, but find a different way to tell it, and wrapping it in a package of sci-fi or sort of Afrofuturism or
Yeah.
fairy tale or really kind of gave me that space to kind of do that. But in terms of how Steal Away connects to my previous work, I've always, in my previous work, I've always I've been interested in stories about strong women. I mean, I did a series called the Book of Negroes, and starring Angelou Ellis. It was a miniseries, and
Yes.
even with Brother, the mother characters are quite a strong figure. I did a film a few years ago called Lie With Me. So I'm always been intrigued um, by that. And Brother was in some ways, a very masculine, muscular film, and I wanted to kind of explore a more kind of feminine side of a story.
Whatever happened to that Aaron Pierre guy? Haven't heard from him since.
I know he's got Aaron Pierre's kind of wandered off into obscurity. No one knows who he is anymore.
Yeah, haven't
Uh,
heard from him since Brother. The film suggests that beauty and privilege often mask something darker beneath. What did you want to say about appearances and hidden truths?
well, I think um, even now in our world, there is the sense of what you see, and but there's always what is hidden. Even for myself as an artist, as a filmmaker, you kind of move through the world in some ways naive, and then you get invited to certain spaces, and you realize there's another world that's underneath it. And there are other powers that be that shape and sort of chart and help to create the world for the rest of us. And so I really was intrigued by the the idea of mask that's I think we all wear in some cases, but the mask of power and how sometimes it can seem benevolent and welcoming and inviting, but to to be sort of be aware and to be cautious of that benevolence.
Yeah, and we see like Fanny literally putting on a mask in the film, and I love that. I love how metaphorically and literally you're explaining how this story is being told through this beautiful story.
Mhm.
And Cecile and Fanny, they come from these opposite worlds, yet they form a very powerful bond. How
Mhm.
did you shape their dynamic while directing both Mallori and Angourie in this
Yeah.
film?
I like you say, they come from opposite world, but at the same time, I wanted to have when they eventually come together that it felt earned.
Mm,
That at first that there is a suspicion that there is a bit of a tug of war and between them, and to so that when they eventually have to um, get together and fight the powers that be, that we felt like it was emotionally earned, and I think in the story, Angara's character redeems herself.
mm,
She just to go back to your other question, she's living in a world that is blind. She's not aware of what is actually happening around her. She's living in a very sort of isolated, insular world, and uh, and she doesn't see the um, unsavory, sinister elements within her own house, within her own domain, and once you kind of, in some ways, become awakened or become, to use a kind of word that is being kind of co-opted, but maybe I'll reclaim it now as woke. Yeah.
I hate that word now.
I hate that word too. I used to love that when
Yeah,
Childish
yeah.
Gambino sang
And
it.
it's become colonized,
It's become
really.
completely,
Yeah.
but when she when Angari's character Fanny becomes aware and conscious, when she becomes conscious of her circumstances, she has a choice to make. Do I perpetuate that power? Do I take my rightful place within that power structure, or do I step out of that and form a bit of a sisterhood with Cecile, and and help her to kind of realize her own freedom?
I'm going to go off a script a little bit with my question here. I do want to know, and without spoiling, of course, the scene with Angourie, I'm probably saying her name wrong,
And it's
with
it's
Angourie.
Angari, kind of like flowery. Angari.
Oh, okay. With her character Fanny, at the party with her dress, and she has her menstrual cycle. Was there metaphorically you were trying to tell us something with a story of uh, sort of darkness and the spilling of blood and what that means with exposure and her being exposed in a way?
I in horror stories and in sci and in fantasy stories, sort of there's always these darker elements, and blood is always involved, and blood in terms of transformation, is always involved in terms of a character uh, moving from one world into another world, and it's oftentimes the kind of onset of something new, of adulthood, or in case of, say, werewolf story, there's it's always it's that transition is always used as an allegory, as a metaphor for
Yeah.
transformation. And I wanted to use the imagery of blood and red
Mm,
as a symbolic um, imagery throughout this story, all the way until the very end, which we won't give any spoilers about.
right, right. Because it's like she's exposed and then she's trying to cover it up. So
Yes.
yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And you mentioned that she lives in this insular world, and we see this mansion which feels like its own character. It's very enchanting, but also both claustrophobic. How did you approach designing and filming within that space?
I was really intrigued and really wanted to world build, and to really mythologize the imagery, and because so some of the films that I love, do that. They create their own world, and I think as a younger person, I was always drawn to, um, films that did that, and so I was really trying to create a world that had its own rules, and I wanted to uh, echo, and to highlight sort of Afrofuturism, and to have the Cecile character be look fabulous. Is she from the past? Is she from the present? Is she from the future? With her costumes and with her hairstyle and with her makeup, with the production design. I wanted a kind of sense of a trans history in some ways, and of what this world is. Is it a retro future world? Um, it's really kind of focus on having the audience participate and puzzle and sort of try to decode the world in some ways. Because I like to participate when I watch films, and also just using this sort of cinematic language of mystery, the cinematic language of suspense, and having the kind of the world of steal away with the hair and makeup design, and having all of that help tell the story, because it's really one story. There's a characters,
Mhm.
there's a music, there's a costume, there's hair, but it's ultimately they're all in service of telling one story, and having it feel harmonious, and of one piece.
There's a beautiful irony in Cecile's character that, and you mentioned Afrofuturistic. She's got this beautiful Afrofuturistic vibe with her hair and her looks, and she looks just very regal and very stoic and just beautiful. She looks like royalty. And I
Yes.
found that to be very ironic, given that, she's essentially a refugee being brought into this very wealthy home, and she looks more wealthier than the people that she's living with. So I found that to be very compelling and interesting, seeing that aspect of her character,
Yeah, yeah.
in contrast to the family that she's living with.
Yeah, I think in terms of African peoples, and sort of Africans or Black people in the diaspora, it doesn't matter where you go. For me, it's like if you go to, I'm originally from Jamaica, and there, it doesn't matter how poor you are, you adorn yourself, you look great,
Mm.
and I've traveled to South Africa, and been, and to see how African peoples dress and adorn themselves. They even like basketball players, athletes, or Black athletes, or track
Yeah.
stars. When you see Shakuri, Richardson, and looking fabulous, or Flojo. There's a kind of history of um, African peoples in diaspora, looking good, and
Yeah.
being and sort of um, being adorn themselves, which I wanted to kind of have that come through.
My last question is, Brother left viewers devastated but also uplifted by love and family. What emotional state do you want audiences to leave with after watching Steal Away?
I want the audience to feel a sense of uh, f- sense of being entertained, first of all, to hopefully watch it again and to get more of it from this, maybe a second or third viewing, and to think about the future. So I wanted that last image to evoke a sense of um, riding off into an Afrocentric, glorious future, and that's what I want to leave audiences with.
Fantastic. This was an incredible film. I love the fact that you don't box yourself into a specific genre, because it navigates all different genres. You've got like this kind of Southern Gothic vibe, there's horror, there's this fairy tale. I absolutely loved it. And it took me on a journey that I was not expecting.
Appreciate that.
So
I really appreciate you saying that, because I mean, I think that I think you're the first African American I've spoken to about it. And so I was really kind of aware, conscious, okay, how will African American audiences, you know, um, how will they respond to this world, and how will they respond to the film? And so it's
yeah.
heartening to hear you say that. It's encouraging.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film, and I can't wait for everybody else to see it at TIFF. So, thank you so much, Clement, for taking the
Thank
time to
you.
speak to Black Girl Nerds. I appreciate the conversation.
And yeah, I'm sure I'll see you around TIFF.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerds. Better shake your booties for black girl nerds.